What if I told you that this episode isn't about fixing anything? The season 20, episode 12 title for Sister Wives is What If We Work This Out? But let's be real. Nothing gets figured out. It just gets done. We watch as Kody Brown trains his body, but doesn't repair his relationships. Apologies being made to wives, while kids in some cases are avoided. We hear accountability, without any particular duty being cited. This episode isn't about healing, it's about image rehab, according to an insider. Beginning with Robyn's micro-expressions in the garage, through Meri's cringe-worthy dating plotline, and culminating in Christine's request to relive a marriage she's already survived, it's a story that repeats itself in every frame with this cast and director. Repose. This isn't fixing something that's broken, since true healing doesn't begin with cameras. It does not begin with safe apologies, and it certainly does not skip those who are most hurt. So, tonight, we're going to pick apart what this episode really shows: the performance, the dynamic of power change, the apologies that are never there, and for why the kids and not the wives are the real news nobody wants to tell. Because when the repair is selective, that is, nothing ever gets fixed, it only gets recorded. In episode 12, healing and reflection are not characteristics of the opening scene. The opening in this episode has to do with optics. We watch as Kody Brown hauls his way up a hill, visor on, backpack full of weights strapped tightly to his body, sweat dripping down his face, breathing heavy. This isn't a man quietly working on himself. This is a man being observed working on himself. The camera is on him, breathing is amplified in the audio design, and the point is made before a word is spoken. Watch while I try. However, this scene has nothing to do with health, has nothing to do with longevity, and has absolutely nothing to do with repairing family. It's about reinvention. Kody is not preparing himself or trying to rebuild relationships within his family. He is merely working on public image. The Special Forces attitude is evident despite the fact that the series deliberately does not mention it. This is important. It is a clear fourth wall break, a move towards shattering the belief that this scene occurs naturally within the world that is Time's Sister Wives asterisk. The silence is louder than the truth. Optics take precedence over honesty. When Kody describes his own motivations, he offers a statement which appears almost casual but actually telling. My wife is 11 years younger. I don't want to be the old man. That's not an aging issue. That's a status issue. Kody doesn't fear being unhealthy. He fears being irrelevant, being weak, losing appeal. He doesn't need to be healthy for a long time. He needs to impress an audience for a short while longer. The meaning isn't hard to discern. His relevance to himself and to his own self-worth remains connected to dominance and strength, and his appeal to the youngest person who is yet to lose interest in him. Then comes the appearance of Robyn. The backpack is heavy, and she can't lift it. The scene is handled with humor, but there is significance. Kody is showing off. Robyn is the witness. She is watching Kody perform pull-ups. She is watching with a significant interest. The dynamics change dramatically. The dynamics change from self-optimization to a completely unbearable observation. This isn't a husband quietly supported by a spouse. It is a man who is observed, rewarded, adored. When Robyn tells the thing that causes her to roar is when Kody is a good dad, the intended experience is meant to be affirming. However, the experience falls flat instead, because they realize that math doesn't add up. A good dad to which kids? The show doesn't need to explore the question. The silence does it for them. We've sat through seasons of emotional unavailability, missed milestones, troubled relationships, and downright alienation. Thus, when Robyn describes Kody's attractiveness as being because of his role as a father, there is an unintended revelation regarding the split within the whole family. This isn't universal fatherhood being rewarded. It's selective fatherhood that's being praised, and this makes a difference too, because what is actually being rewarded in all of this is not accountability or repair, but performance. Kody is rewarded for being seen as strong, active, and loved. Not for listening, not for repairing, not for being there for the children, who no longer trust him. No words are needed to state the significance of episode 12, as its emotional value is already established within the series through effort that looks good is more valued than effort that heals. Nor is there a hint of reconciliation, nor any credit given for the presence of the children, nor any soul-searching regarding the past neglect. Rather, the camera lens chooses sweat, work, flirting, and the notion of self-cultivation, as long as it's presented properly, is enough. However, self-improvement without accountability is a form of rebrand, and that is the silent truth of this initial sequence. Kody is not working on repairing relationships. Kody is working on repairing narrative capital. He is preparing for a future where he will be considered competent and strong and desirable, not necessarily part of the family he ostensibly leads. Episode 12 does not start with healing because in order to heal, there has to be humility. The process begins with performance because performance maintains control. And that tells us all the things we need to know about what this apology tour is going to be all about. The garage conversation is where episode 12 quietly unfolds, not in any of the dialogue, but in reactions. Is less than https://www.reddit.com/user/Neil. Kody is sitting comfortably, almost with pleasure at himself, while telling Robyn about apologizing for Janelle. His tone is one of success. He is relieved. He is relieved about something going well. And Robyn's face does something her words never could. There's a flicker before she responds, a tightening around the mouth, a micropause in her breathing, a brief widening of the eyes that registers not as shock but as recalibration. This isn't surprise. This is processing unexpected loss of control. These aren't supportive comments. They're not pride. They're not relief. They're micro-expressions of discomfort, of the kind that appear when an individual realizes that they're caught in a situation they didn't invite. Robyn is not mad about the apology from Kody to Janelle. She is disturbed that he has done this without her. This is a key distinction. For a long time, Robyn has been more than a wife. She has been a conduit, a filter through whom Kody has processed all the conflict in the rest of the family. It has been she who has translated, validated complaints in a way that Kody could receive. Her presence was not simply symbolic, it was structural. Thus, the fact that Kody lightheartedly says that he apologized on his own is, in the context, not a sign of growth but of displacement. Then comes the missing piece of the puzzle. A little later in the episode, it's confirmed that something very telling to Robyn's role was that Kody was told not to bring Robyn to North Carolina by Janelle. This completely undermines what Robyn thought was going to happen and what Robyn didn't feel left out emotionally. She was deliberately excluded. "I'm not doing it out of spite," Janelle said. "I'm making a boundary, a very clean, very direct line, a line which says, if we are going to have this conversation, we will have it alone." And that boundary works. Janelle's message is clear. Nothing with Robyn is an option. This one decision robs Robyn of her long-standing status in the family as the emotional gatekeeper. This also pulls Robyn out from under the umbrella of conflict resolution. But most importantly, this startles Kody into participating without a safety net, without someone to validate his reality and temper his accountability. The looks on Robyn's face in the garage all click into place. This isn't jealousy. This isn't her reaction about Janelle. It's the realization that a system of support in her life no longer works. This is displacement. Robyn has not been replaced. She has been bypassed. And this is much more destabilizing. Her discomfort has nothing to do with Kody reconnecting with Janelle. It has everything to do with Kody being able to function emotionally without her participation. For someone whose impact has always depended on being close to her, being understood, and being in sync emotionally, this is clearly a loss of power. What makes this so telling is the fact that none of these thoughts and feelings ever surface in verbal form for Robyn. She does not verbalize any of this. Rather, it comes out in body language and facial expressions, and in nonverbal times of delay and pause. This is what people describe when referring to micro-expressions. And it's also important to record what Robyn doesn't do. She doesn't ask Janelle how she feels. She doesn't ask what Kody assumed responsibility for. She is not relieved that there was even an apology that occurred. Rather than that, Addie has an internal focus. How did this happen without me? This tells us a lot about the emotional pedigree of this family. Janelle's boundary is not offensive. It is absolute. It is effective precisely for the reason that it is not emotive. Janelle doesn't require validation, approval, or closure. Janelle requires distance, and that is most especially from Robyn. And Robyn, for perhaps the first time, has to sit with the reality that she no longer controls the emotional flow of the family narrative. Such is not a dramatic meeting. It's not a fight. It is a quieter, more lasting thing. This is the point at which Robyn recognizes that her presumed power of influence may be withdrawn. That's a lesson she's never had to learn in her life. The garage scene isn't an explosion. It doesn't have to be. It breaks softly, cleanly, leaving a truth implicit that the show never speaks in words. Robyn's strength was not taken from her. In short, it's no longer needed. While the other members of the Brown family are struggling through the rubble of emotional breakdown, Meri is seemingly living in another world altogether, one that is quieter and more gentle and not connected at all to the conflict on the home front. But her arc kicks off with something truly human, a charity event for her friend Jen's family, since her husband has cancer. There isn't an angle or an agenda or selfish motive here. It's not about her or for her benefit. It's an act of kindness that keeps its head down. Meri gets involved, gets it together, puts her strength into something beyond herself. It's almost, in ways, her healthiest appearance yet. And then the tone changes. The return of Ron, the man from the speed dating episode, is not very natural. It's been produced. The timing is too tidy. The setup is too obvious. The camera work is just a little bit too interested. The message is that they want Meri to move on, and here is how they choose to show that. The side hug starts with a clear message. In fundamentalist culture, there's an element of symbolism in this hug, distance personified through politeness. It embodies a non-threatening kind of touch, often found in situations when touching is limited or emotional understanding has yet to occur. There's no longing or curiosity in this moment. It gives space, awkward space. From there, everything is a stress test in a quiet, muffled way. Small talk, banter, sleep, weather. Nothing dangerous, nothing revealing, no vulnerability. This isn't flirting, it is navigation. Well, then there are the eggs. Ron assists in preparing the food, though he is struggling. The eggshells fall into the pan. The eggs that should have been fried are scrambled. Meri watches. She does not interfere. She no longer guides. She simply watches. It's a small moment, but it's full of meaning. I've been living in a marriage for decades where I was there, but not with my partner, where there was effort, but no intimacy, where you learn to be alongside someone, not with them. And here, inadvertently, the pattern continues. Ron is performing it. Meri is observing. Not engaging, not cooperating, just observing. This doesn't feel like romance. I think it feels like audition television. Ron is not being judged as a man. He is being assessed as a prospect, in front of a camera lens, in public, in a place of social and emotional authority held by Meri. It's a situation which reflects her past, not challenges it. And this irony hurts particularly. It's not that Meri is a cold or manipulative person. It's that she has never been offered the chance to practice intimacy in the absence of structure, expectation, and observation. Her whole experience of being an adult has been circumscribed by rules, power dynamics, and the scarcity of emotions. Therefore, when the series offers her dating, it does so on the same controlled terms. Cameras rolling, script being followed, audience anticipation. Even this fresh start is not her own. The fundraising event becomes a stage. Ron becomes a variable. The observer is once again Meri. It is, in fact, what risks that is the truly telling aspect of this situation. There is no emotional reach, no vulnerability, no point where Meri finds herself uncertain and open. Meri remains composed and controlled and safe, and that makes sense. Meri has been punished enough times for taking emotional risks. Meri learned early on in life that reaching out might not be answered in a timely fashion, or at all. This taught her how to live in a relationship at a distance. This is what the show presents as progress. This is what is presented as healing. This is what is presented. But what we are actually seeing is a woman who has never learned how to start over without a guide. It's not that Meri cannot move on. It's that she has never been taught to do that off camera, not requiring approval, not requiring narrative construction, not requiring audience consideration of whether it is significant enough to count. And this is what, of course, makes this particular plot so sadly poignant. This one seems easier than the others, but of course it has its own burden to bear, too. Meri isn't holding back in the past. She's caught up in a system where she never got to practice being fully chosen, fully present, and fully free. And until that happens, every new start will be less like a relationship and more like a rehearsal. The Vegas hotel scene is clearly meant to be the heartfelt focus of episode 12, but it simply does not have a quiet feeling to it. All this is a sign of a production necessity, not a personal choice. It's a very large room, almost cavernous. It has a gigantic table, which establishes a physical distance where a psychological closeness is being attempted. The lighting is even symmetrical stage design. This is no room for a reconciliation. It is a room where closure on film is to be obtained. This isn't healing. It's narrative maintenance. Christine and David enter first, unsure if anyone else is joining them, a subtle indicator of how little control they actually have over the situation. When Kody arrives, there's no warmth, no curiosity, no softening. He immediately tries to set the tone by asking them to drink quickly, creating urgency before he has something to say. That rush matters. It's not the vulnerability, but the containment. Kody then delivers his apology broad, controlled, and carefully non-specific. "I'm sorry how it ended. I was angry. There were good times, too." On the surface, it sounds reasonable, balanced, mature even. But emotionally, it does something very different. It flattens the past. It neutralizes conflict. It blurs responsibility. This is not accountability, it's emotional neutralization. No real behaviors are named. No specific harms acknowledged. No recognition of prolonged neglect, humiliation, or emotional withdrawal. Rather, the apology is framed as mutual turbulence, as that which happened, rather than something in which he actively participated. It enables Kody to look introspective without being vulnerable, to look remorseful without being exposed. David's presence immediately flips the dynamic, and Kody can feel that. David isn't hostile. He isn't defensive. He listens. He even says he can sometimes see Kody's perspective as a man, but Kody doesn't engage with that opening. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't build rapport. Because David isn't the audience Kody is here for, Christine is. This conversation is not about coexisting peacefully going forward. It's about reclaiming narrative ground with the woman who publicly left him. And that becomes painfully clear when Kody crosses an emotional line declaring that he did love Christine. That would likely sound validating in any other context. Here, it comes off as intrusive. Christine's unease is instant and palpable. She is not looking for confirmation. She is not yearning for recognition. She is sitting next to her husband, within a life she's already picked, being tugged backwards into emotional areas she's already exited. That's not closure for her. It's reopening. What Kody doesn't notice is that Christine doesn't need her pain reframed. She needs her past respected as complete. And by insisting on revisiting love, he places her in the awkward position of having to emotionally manage his realization again. This is the moment which shows the basic dislocation of the whole meeting. Kody is apologizing for forgiveness. Christine has forgiven herself. She doesn't need permission to move on. She doesn't need validation that what they had was real. She needs distance, not reconciliation, not recognition, not redefinition. And that's where the irony lives. This apology comes too late, not because of what the words say, but because Christine no longer occupies that emotional space in which those words might have mattered. The conversation exists for the show, for the audience, for Kody's sense of narrative completion. But Christine's life has already moved forward. She has already redefined herself outside the relationship. David, silently observing, is the counterpoint. He does not join the competition. He does not correct her. He does not dominate the space. His presence alone underlines what Christine no longer tolerates, emotional turbulence masquerading as depth. The healing of Christine is not spoken about here. It's about Kody needing absolution. And that's why it lands hollow. Because closure only works when both parties still need it. And here, only one of them does. Christine has already left. The apology didn't come too late for the story. It came too late for her. Episode 12 wraps up not with closure, but with the most uncomfortable question of the season 1 that the show circles but never directly answers. Why the wives first? Why not the kids? This omission isn't an accident. It's structural. We watch Kody deliberately move through what looks like an apology tour throughout the episode. Janelle, Christine, conversations framed as repair, growth, maturity. Beneath that surface, though, lies a glaring absence. The people who have been hurt the most, who have borne some of the deepest and most lasting damage, aren't part of the process at all. David speaks aloud what the audience has been thinking the entire season. If Kody's looking for redemption, it starts with his kids. That hits hard, because it cuts to the heart of the whole operation. Apologizing to former spouses may grease the wheels for adult narratives. It may blunt public perception. It might even bring emotional balm to the one offering the apology. But it doesn't touch the most delicate, still unresolved relationships in the family. The very idea of an apology tour collapses under its own logic the moment it excludes the kids. This isn't about privacy. If it were, the wives wouldn't be having those conversations on camera. This isn't about protecting children from public discomfort. Their pain has already been public, repeatedly, over years. This is all about control of the narrative. Kids don't cooperate with image management. They don't validate ego. They don't soften the story to make the adults feel better. Kids remember patterns, not speeches. They remember who showed up and who disappeared, who made them feel expendable. That makes them dangerous to a redemption arc. Apologizing to adults allows for negotiation. Adults can contextualize, rationalize, even excuse behavior in the name of peace. Children don't do that, especially adult children who've already spent years emotionally distancing themselves for survival. Kody's aversion to engaging them isn't confusion, it's avoidance. An apology to the children would, by necessity, need to be specific. It would need to acknowledge that there were times when he used control in lieu of connection. It would call for an admission of favoritism, absence, and emotional inconsistency, not as concepts but as realities lived. And most significantly, it would need the realization that perhaps forgiveness will never be forthcoming. That's the risk Kody hasn't been willing to take. You can't rebuild family credibility and leave the deepest wounds unplumbed. You can't claim growth when you're actively avoiding the relationships that would challenge it most. And you can't repair a family, starting with the people who already had the power. It's like episode 12 is really not asking, what if we work this out? It's asking, what happens when the repair is selective? The answer is painfully simple. Nothing gets fixed, it just gets filmed. The adults get conversations, the audience gets scenes, the narrative gets progress, but the children stay frozen in unresolved silence, relegated to the periphery, and watching as accountability stops just short of them. That silence will matter, because healing doesn't start where it's easiest, it starts where it's hardest. And in taking the path of least resistance, Kody shows the true priority of the apology tour, not repair, but containment. Contain the damage. Contain the criticism. Contain the narrative. But containment is not healing, it's delay. And the more that goes on with the kids unacknowledged, the clearer it becomes. This isn't about working things out, it's about the orderly appearance of collapse. The episode is without closure because it wasn't about closure. Control was. And that, more than any argument or confrontation, is why the family remains broken. This episode isn't messy because emotions are raw. It's messy because the truth is rationed. Kody wants closure without consequence. Robyn doesn't want to lose control because she wants stability. Christine wants peace without going back to the pain. Janelle seeks boundary. Meri wants relevance. And what about the kids? They want to be acknowledged. And that's the apology that never came.